All right, we'll start the recording. So hello and thank you for your interest in learning more about the 2020 Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Culture of Health Prize. This is the Phase 1 applicant informational webinar, and as I said, it is being recorded and will be made available in case you want to review the material later or share the presentation with any of your community partners. So my name is Carrie Carroll, and I'm coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin at the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute. And also presenting today will be Katie Weir, our great colleague at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, and Olivia Little, who's also with the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute. Katie, would you like to say a quick hello?
Hi all, thanks for joining us today. Looking forward to the conversation.
And Olivia?
Hi everyone, thanks for being with us.
Great, glad you're here. So the RWJF Culture of Health Prize is a collaboration between the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute. And many of you know the UW Pop Health Institute from our work and leadership on county health rankings and roadmaps for over a decade now. And together we're partnering with RWJF and others to help build a culture of health across the country. So before we jump into the specifics of the RWJF Culture of Health Prize, we'd like to take just a moment to get you oriented to the Zoom webinar technology. You should be able to see the slides we're showing in your viewer window. And when you scroll over the viewer window, you should see the webinar controls. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them using the Q&A function shown here. Just circled it. And then when you click on this control, the Q&A box will open up and you can simply type in your question and then click send to submit. And we've weaved in most of the commonly asked questions about the prize throughout the webinar today. And we'll do our best to answer any specific questions you have at the end of the webinar. And we're even planning to stay on the line for a few minutes in case anyone else wants to join and has additional questions. And please know, if we don't get to your specific questions before we sign off today, we can certainly follow up by email after the webinar, and we'll provide our contact information as well. So there's also a chat function shown here. I just circled that, and we'll use that to share, the chat function, to share some key documents. In fact, right now, our great colleague Angela Acker is chatting a link to the slides for today's presentation. It's probably one of our most frequently asked questions is, where are the slides? So we'll chat out a PDF of those. And then we'll also be sharing links to two very essential documents for the application process. The 2020 call for applications, and then there's also a frequently asked questions document. And I can't stress enough how helpful that document is. It answers questions we receive from applicants on a rolling basis, and every year we add to that, and so we're chatting out those links as well. Please be sure to review both documents carefully as you prepare your application. And again, any questions you have, please use the Q&A button. So let's get started. Here's an overview of what we plan to cover today. And these areas encompass some of our most frequently asked questions about the prize. So we'll cover what the purpose of the RWJF Culture of Health Prize is, what the application involves, who is eligible, what the selection criteria is for the prize, how one can apply, what are some tips for a successful application, and how you can learn more. So we really do hope from this presentation you will get all the information you need to decide about whether your community feels ready to apply and feels like you're a good fit for this application, and then certainly how to navigate the actual application process. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Katie Weir with RWJF to tell us more about the purpose of the prize and RWJF's vision for building a culture of health. Katie.
Thank you, Carrie. Our vision at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation is one where we, as a nation, all strive together to build a culture of health, a culture that enables all in our diverse society to lead healthier lives now and for generations to come. And what do we mean by building a culture of health? A culture of health recognizes that where we live, such as our access to affordable homes, quality schools, good jobs, and reliable transportation, affects how long and how well we live. People in communities throughout the country are working together in new ways so that everyone can live their healthiest life possible, regardless of who they are or how much money they make. A culture of health is happening in diverse places, in cities, counties, tribes, regions, and rural towns, with a variety of both economic, social, and environmental strengths, as well as challenges. And though each place's journey looks different, they all show us what a culture of health can look like. The RWJF Culture of Health Prize elevates the compelling stories of communities where residents are working together to transform neighborhoods, schools, businesses, and so much more, so that the opportunity for better health flourishes for all. We know that there are communities that are already building a culture of health, and that's why the RWJF Culture of Health Prize was created. The purpose of the prize is to honor and elevate U.S. communities that demonstrate outstanding examples of the Foundation's Culture of Health vision in action, communities that are working at the forefront of advancing health, opportunity, and equity for all. By seeking out these strong examples of communities that are creating a culture of health and celebrating their successes, we see this as a way to affirm their direction. We also see this as a way to highlight the unique ways communities are working to ensure that all of their residents have their opportunity to be healthier, and also provide ideas about what's possible so as to inspire others. As you can see from this map, we will soon have more than 40 communities designated as RWJF Culture of Health Prize winners. The 2019 prize-winning communities will be announced on November 12th. The map here shows all the winners from 2013 through 2018. The winning communities span 24 states and include 5 Native nations. They represent all types of places, cities, counties, tribes, small rural towns, and interconnected regions across the full range of population size, and all with different physical, economic, and demographic characteristics. In addition to the purpose of the prize, you may be wondering, what do prize winners receive? It is important to emphasize that the prize is not a grant. It is an award to recognize communities for what they have already accomplished on their journey to build a culture of health. Prize winners each receive a $25,000 cash prize, which the community can use in any way they choose to enhance their work. The foundation does not require budget or reporting requirements. The value of the prize goes far beyond the dollar amount, however. It is a national recognition that honors and elevates the work being accomplished in communities across the nation. Prize winners have their stories and successes celebrated broadly as a way to help inspire others. And communities are provided with professionally produced communications materials, including videos, photos, and stories, and with strategic communications, guidance, and outreach along the way. Winners also become part of a national network of past prize-winning communities, which brings opportunities to connect with and learn from leaders from other communities, locally, regionally, and nationally. We've also heard from past prize applicants that the process of applying can be a great learning experience for their community. Applicants have shared how they've benefited from the process by bringing partners together, reflecting on what the community has accomplished, and using the prize criteria to identify strengths and opportunities for improvement. So as you can see here, in the words of one community leader, the best part of the RWJF prize application process has been to identify and acknowledge the amazing things our leaders have accomplished with and for us. We often forget to stop, smell the roses, and reflect on our endeavors, and the prize experience has allowed us to do just that. With all that said about the purpose of the prize and the benefits of the prize, let me turn back to Carrie to talk about the application and what it involves.
Thank you very much, Katie. I'm sure this has all whet your appetite for learning more about what you can do to bring your community to the forefront as the potential RWJF Culture of Health Prize winner in 2020. And as on the screen, we have some quotes here from prize alumni, past prize winners that talk about why it's been important to them. And you can read more about past prize winning communities, view those videos, start the application process, all on the prize website, which is rwjf.org/prize. So a brief overview of the application process. There are really 3 phases in total. Phase 1 is where we are right now. The application is currently open to all U.S. communities, and we will go into great detail on the application process today. So we'll spend most of our time on phase 1. Often, though, people also want to hear a little bit about both how many applications we receive for phase 1 typically, and then also what to expect should your community advance. So just real quick, I would say that in recent years, we've received about 200 applications for phase 1. That's a typical number in recent years. And then should communities move on to phase 2, we invite a select number of folks to move on. If that should happen for you and your community, you would have a chance to further expand on your community's work across all 6 of the prize criteria, which we'll be talking about today. And then just to say that in past years, the phase 2 application has included a second written essay, a brief video interview with 2 to 3 residents, and then a draft site visit itinerary that lays out what you might show site visitors if there were a site visit to your community. So a select number of phase 2 applicants move on as finalists and are invited to host a site visit. And I might just add that the number of finalists varies from year to year, depending on the pool and the criteria selection process. But in past years, they range from about 10 to no more than 16 finalist communities. And the site visit is really an opportunity to give the community a life and voice to the phase 1 and 2 second phase application. So following the site visits, finalist communities are selected, a set of them are selected to win the RWJF Culture of Health Prize, and then up to 10 winners can be selected. In past years, it's varied, the number of winners has varied between 4 and 8. So please know that much more detail and instruction would be provided to communities that move forward in each phase of the competition, but we just like to let people know what to look ahead to if your community should continue to, or should advance throughout the selection process. So this is probably one of the most important things we'll convey today, that the deadline for the 2020 selection process is Monday, November 4th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Please note the time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. It really is an absolute deadline, and we do not make any exceptions, including none for internet connectivity or confusion about time zones. So again, I hope you've marked your calendars for Monday, November 4th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And just a little bit more about the overall timeline and key dates. So again, the November 4th is on here on the slide. Then our phase 1 applicants would hear from us by the end of the day on December 9th as to whether or not they're invited to submit an application for phase 2. Phase 2 applications are then due January 16th. So we realize many of us take time away at the end of the year. So we wanted to mention that there is a tight turnaround there in the schedule and make everybody aware of that. So who's eligible to apply? This is one of the biggest questions we get. I want to stress that this is an award that is based on geographic jurisdiction. It is not a prize or an award for a single organization or a single project or single initiative. Instead, it is a prize that reflects the work across the whole geography of your place. And so to be eligible to apply, you must present an application that reflects the work of one of these, that falls into one of these categories. So I'll read through them very quickly. A county, parish, borough, city, town, village, or other municipality with a publicly elected governing body. One could be, or community could be, a federally recognized tribe or a state designated Indian reservation, a Native Hawaiian organization serving and representing the interests of Native Hawaiians in Hawaii. This is a customized definition for Hawaii only. Or a region, and a region is the contiguous municipalities, counties, and or reservations. Excuse me, I also wanted to add that communities within US territories are welcome to apply. And there are places in this very diverse country of ours that have unique municipal governance structures. And if that might be you, we encourage you to contact us well in advance of the deadline to discuss any eligibility questions you might have. I can't stress that enough either. Please reach out to us well in advance of the deadline to talk about any unique circumstances you have there in your community. But I also do want to also stress that for the purposes of the prize, that individual neighborhoods and full states are not eligible to apply. We understand that in large cities, it's difficult to represent a whole of a city or a large place, but we ask you to strive for this, and we really cannot look at neighborhoods alone. So it is perfectly acceptable within the context of a city or a county-wide application to feature the good work of a neighborhood. Please do so, though, in the context of broader efforts that are taking place within that town or city or county. So we could say more about that if it would be helpful to you. So as we've said, the prize honors the work of whole US communities. While an organization or coalition can certainly take the lead in preparing the application for our consideration, we know someone has to be that author, be that leader, a convener for the conversation around what to include in your essay. But as you work with one another, please do keep in mind the whole community. It really is imperative that you keep this community-wide focus in mind throughout the application process. And again, I will say it, that the work of a single organization or a single initiative or a single program will not move forward. We do get a lot of questions about eligibility, so I might just take another minute or two on this. Often folks ask if communities located in the same state as a previous prize winner, that map that Katie showed, whether or not those communities can still apply. And certainly the answer is yes. Each applicant will be judged individually and not in relation to other applicants or other winners located in that same geographic area. And that map that you saw earlier does reflect this well. Another frequently asked question is whether past applicants can reapply this year. And certainly we know that building a culture of health, it's a continuous journey. And if you're a past applicant and you feel you've made a lot of progress on your journey, then we absolutely welcome your application. Please know that each past applicants evaluated individually each year and not in relationship to what they previously submitted. So there is one exception to this, past prize winning communities. If you are already a Culture of Health prize winning community, you cannot apply for the prize again. And I suppose the second exception might be those communities that were designated as finalists in the 2019 competition. Finalists for 2019, we asked to sit out at least one year, one round before they reapply. So the past finalist communities can be found in that prize FAQ document that we mentioned and chatted out, and also past prize winners are listed very clearly in the call for applications. All right, so frequently we are asked, what is the criteria for selecting these RWJF Culture of Health Prize winners? And perhaps the most important element in how we select who goes on to be a prize-winning community is how your community performs across the 6 prize key criteria. These criteria are absolutely central to the entire process, and Katie and I are going to take turns walking through each of these one by one in just a minute. A related question is how applications are scored and whether or not the criteria are weighted during the selection process. And we'd like you to know that there's no formal weighting of the 6 different criteria. We're looking for communities that are able to address all 6 of them across a broad and holistic way. With that said, I would add that in phase 1, the judges are very focused on the first 3 criteria as we consider those foundational to building a culture of health. So with that said, we'll turn to the actual 6 criteria and walk through these. The first one, defining health in the broadest possible terms. And so building a culture of health means using diverse and comprehensive strategies to address the many things that contribute to health, opportunity, and equity in our communities. For this criterion, we want to hear about how your community is working across the multiple areas that influence health and equity. And one way of thinking about the many things that affect health is by looking at the factors in the county health rankings model, which you see on this slide. So when we talk about health, we define it very broadly. I think that's why this model of health helps with that. We're thinking about a wide range of factors, such as those that you see in the blue boxes on the right. These are just some examples of the types of influences that ultimately drive how long and how well people live. From your phase 1 application, judges will really want to understand how you're taking action across several of these areas and in a way that responds to key challenges in your local community, in ways that builds on the strengths of your community, in ways that are unique to your unique place in the country. In particular, we would like to hear about how you are reducing inequities and concerted efforts to improve social and economic conditions to do so. We know that they have tremendous influence on overall health outcomes. And so reviewers will be looking for strong examples of how your community is improving social and economic conditions that address maybe educational opportunities or providing job training, enhancing community safety, addressing affordable housing, transportation, promoting economic development. So we're really looking for how your community is addressing health from a very broad point of view. And we'll turn now to Katie for criterion number 2.
Our second criterion is committing to sustainable systems changes and policy-oriented long-term solutions. For us, this means thoughtful, data-informed decisions that include a strategic mix of policy, programmatic, and systems changes designed to last. As part of this criterion, reviewers will be interested in how your community is making strategic decisions that are informed by data, evidence, and/or innovation, and that demonstrate how community leaders, organizations across sectors, and especially residents who are most impacted by the changes are involved in collectively identifying priorities and taking coordinated action. And as you can see on this next slide, in your application, reviewers will be looking for examples of how your community is pulling together strategies that go beyond providing programs and services to thinking about making lasting, equitable changes to policies, systems, and environments. Sometimes this might be at the level of government through laws and ordinances, but this could also be at the organizational level, for example, changing systems and practices within businesses and schools. And when programs are featured, it's helpful for reviewers to understand how they are part of a larger strategy and how the work is being sustained beyond any one grant period or funding cycle. We have been asked for examples of policy systems and environmental changes that communities have undertaken. There are many, so we'll provide a few examples, not meant to be prescriptive in any way. So some of those examples, for example, are around how communities are investing in community and economic development, job policies that promote economic security, trauma-informed care systems in schools or law enforcement, smoke-free or healthy food policies, and physical environment improvements, such as transportation plans that link to housing, jobs, and healthcare. Carrie, to you for number 3.
All right. The third criterion is creating conditions that give everyone a fair and just opportunity to reach their best possible health. This is about intentionally working to identify, reduce, ultimately eliminate barriers that limit opportunity, and in doing so by partnering with residents most directly impacted by local challenges. So here, reviewers will be interested to hear about how your community values diverse perspectives and actively fosters a sense of security, belonging, and trust among all residents. We also want to hear about how your community is addressing disparities by taking action to remove obstacles to better health. In your application, it will be important to demonstrate how your efforts go beyond targeting programs and services, such as programs and services for those that are experiencing negative health outcomes, to really how residents, especially those who have been historically excluded from opportunities, how those residents are able to fully participate in problem solving. And applications that really stand out here in this criterion will be able to provide specific examples of how power is shifting in your local community, how leadership is being shared with those who may have traditionally been absent from decision-making processes. And so really, so those most affected by poor health outcomes are involved as full participants in making decisions and driving solutions. And if you look at some of the stories of past prize-winning communities, you'll see some terrific examples of how communities are acknowledging very complicated histories, how they're drawing strength from their diverse cultures, how they are mobilizing residents and youth to improve neighborhoods and address issues from education to community safety to employment and income. Katie.
As Carrie mentioned previously, the first 3 criteria are the main focus of the Phase 1 application. However, we are also looking for standout work in the next 3 criteria, and more information will be gathered about these criteria for applicants that move on to the Phase 2 of the selection process. So this 4th criterion is around harnessing the collective power of leaders, partners, and community members. And it's regarding how individuals and organizations across sectors and disciplines are working together to provide everyone in the community with the opportunity for better health. We encourage communities to demonstrate how they have built diverse and robust partnerships across business, government, residents, nonprofit organizations, faith-based institutions, community organizers, and more, including with those quote-unquote non-traditional health partners, such as the community developers or educators or law enforcement. How are you creating the structures and capacity for shared buy-in, decision-making, coordinated action, and accountability across partners? Another key element of this criterion is how your community is fostering inclusive civic engagement and leadership capacity among all community members and inspiring people to take action to support change for better health.
All right, thanks, Katie. The 5th criterion is securing and making the most of available resources. And this means adopting an enterprising spirit toward your community health improvement efforts. We encourage you to demonstrate how your community is examining existing and potential resources, how you are fully leveraging and aligning assets, existing assets, not just financial resources, but also your residents, your partner organizations, your community institutions, and your natural resources. How you're aligning these things to produce the best value for health. Reviewers are also interested in how communities are making equitable decisions about how to invest resources and how communities are creatively securing, aligning, and integrating funding and other resources in a way that ensures the work sustains beyond the completion of any one grant or any one initiative. And Katie will review the last criterion now.
Thanks, Carrie. The sixth criterion, measuring and sharing progress and results, is about knowing where you are headed and making a community-wide commitment to measuring the quality and impact of coordinated efforts. This involves several elements, including establishing shared goals and definitions of success across sectors and partners, identifying measurable indicators of progress, including tracking disparities in health, and continuously using data to improve processes, track outcomes, and change course when necessary. We want to see how communities are developing systems for collecting and sharing information in ways that go beyond measuring the outcomes of a single program and moving toward being able to determine impacts across your coordinated efforts. We also encourage communities to share how you are communicating and celebrating successes when goals are achieved. Now that we've talked through all the criteria, I'm going to turn to Olivia to go into the specifics of how to apply.
Thanks so much, Katie and Carrie. I was going to start, before I jump into this how do we apply question, we've gotten several questions on the question and answer board about, I think just to clarify as part of the application process, can a certain agency or an organization within a city or a county apply on behalf of that community? So just to clarify that, any organization or entity or agency could take the lead in putting together a prize application, convening partners, and describing the accomplishments throughout that community. Any two people can be listed as contacts on your application. But the important part to remember there is just that your application should reflect the work of the community as a whole, and that that designation and honor goes to the community as a whole. And so that's what we'll be looking for. So I just wanted to clarify that, as we've gotten several questions about that. So yeah, whoever wants to take the lead on that, whether it be a government agency, whether it be a nonprofit organization in the community, a hospital, a school, it can be any of those things, but should reflect the work of your whole community. All right, so, and then lots of other questions coming in. If you have chatted in a question, it may help to put your question into the actual Q&A box. That would help us. And we will get to those at the end, if not before. So if you just heard about those 6 prize criteria and you're really thinking, you know, wow, that resonates. I think that sounds like my community. We're demonstrating progress across those 6 areas. Your next question might be, how do we apply? And so I'd like to walk through that process. As mentioned earlier, everything that you need to apply for the prize starts here at rwjf.org/prize. From our homepage there, you can click that blue hyperlinked text and it'll take you to more information specifically about the 2020 prize application process. So on that page, you'll see our funding opportunity page. We have the prize criteria listed there, the eligibility information, and links to key materials. And I wanted to draw your attention to those key materials. That link for the full funding opportunity is a link to our call for applications brochure, which you can pull up in PDF and print out. That is also available in Spanish. And we also, as Carrie mentioned earlier, highly encourage all of our applicants to review the frequently asked questions document. And that can also be downloaded here. And those questions, you know, have been posed by applicants throughout the years. And so we've tried to really be comprehensive in capturing those, and they can be helpful in really thinking through our eligibility, application, and selection processes. Another thing I just wanted to mention is we really encourage all applicants to start this process early, to go through all this information and engage with your community partners on what you might feature, to really start that process early, because it takes some time to really put together a strong application. So when you are ready to start putting your application together, you can click on the Apply Online button, the green button there, and it'll take you to the My RWJF portal. So this portal, my.rwjf.org, is where you will work on your application. If you've ever applied to the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in the past, you can, you've probably seen this, you would enter your email and your password here and go into the site. And if it's your first time, you would just need to register using that black button and it'll take you through the registration process. In my.rwjf.org, your application homepage is going to look like this, and from here you can access different sections of your application and additional information. So I wanted to draw your attention to the resources button on the left-hand side of the screen. From that link, you can get to a range of resources. And one particular resource I wanted to call out is that Instructions for Community Applicants document. They'll be pointed out by that orange arrow. That has detailed instructions about the whole application and kind of a written overview of what I'm going to talk about right now. And the resources section also is where you can access a recording of this webinar. That's another question we're getting a lot on the board. You will be able to access the recording of the webinar here. It'll also be emailed out to you all who have registered for this webinar, and the slides and everything, as well as a lot of other information on this page. All right, the next thing I want to call out on this page is invite contributors, that button on the left. This is how you can invite others to work on the application with you. Just make sure that when you click on that, you indicate what kind of access you want to give the person that you're inviting. And the reason I mention this is because, as we've talked about, the submission deadlines for RWJF applications are very, very strict. And so it's really highly encouraged that you identify someone who could be a backup person and add them to your application. So if anything last minute comes up, there's not only one person who can get into the system and hit submit or finish up the application, that you have a backup plan. So that's why I mentioned that. Back to the application homepage here, it'll list the sections of the application to be completed. And first, you're going to be asked for the name of your community, some community demographic information, and then 2 key contacts for the application. So again, as I kind of just talked about, given the questions that are coming in, those 2 contact people can be from any organization, or doesn't even necessarily have to be, but 2 people that will be regularly communicating with about the application, that maybe are kind of leading that process of pulling all the information together. And note that both of those contacts will receive email communications about your application and reminders and submission confirmation. The meat of your application really is this phase 1 essay, which we're going to highlight here in green. So I'm going to take a moment to go over those essay instructions and guidelines in detail, because this is what we're really using to evaluate your community. So the essay can be up to 5 pages total, single-spaced. And there are 4 main questions we're asking you to fill out. The first question is introduce your community, or section, I should say. We recommend this to be approximately 1 page of your essay. And we're asking you in this section to tell us a little bit about your community, including its key physical, social, demographic, economic characteristics, your vital assets, your key challenges. It's helpful for us to hear about important historical and cultural considerations, who in your community is most affected by poor health outcomes, and what are the root causes that are driving the health conditions that you describe in your community. And it's also helpful for us to hear a little bit about your community's health improvement journey, how it began, what catalyzed your collective action. So we just want to understand your community's story and context a little bit, to hear what's unique and compelling about your place, how you got started on your journey toward better health, and just kind of, this is an opportunity to make your community come alive a bit for us. The second section is asking you to describe 4 community accomplishments, and this is the longest section. We suggest about 3 pages for this, so about 3/4 of a page per accomplishment here. So in accomplishments, the accomplishments are considered as specific policies, programs, or strategies that you have deployed in your community that really best respond to identified needs, that show how you're making progress toward better health, opportunity, and equity. And when thinking about these 4 accomplishments taken together, think about what helps convey part of that first criterion. You know, how are you defining health in the broadest possible terms? In describing the 4 accomplishments in that, 3/4 page for each, we ask you to weave in some information about how the accomplishment addresses some of those key challenges, perhaps, that you have brought up in your introduction. How, if there are certain ways that the accomplishment is meant to impact or does impact historically excluded populations or geographic areas. We really want to get that sense of the crucial needs and health gaps that exist in your community and how you're prioritizing those and how you're taking action around those things. All right, a couple of important things to note about your 4 accomplishments. We often get this question, accomplishments can be either well-established or relatively new policies, programs, or strategies. So we think it's usually really great when applicants can demonstrate a balanced approach to community improvement. So that may feature some really well-established and successful programs, but you may also find that you have some newly implemented efforts that speak to the criteria that you want to bring up. So we encourage balance there. We often get asked whether an accomplishment needs to be one specific strategy or if it can be a group of strategies, and it can be either. So your accomplishment could focus on one particular policy or program, or it could describe sort of a suite of strategies that the community is doing to address a particular area or pressing needs, such as, a group of strategies to address, for example, early childhood education or community safety or any other number of areas as an accomplishment. But this is very important for the purposes of the application. An accomplishment should not be a planning or convening process or the development of a coalition or initiative on its own. So for example, having conducted a community health assessment or having developed a health improvement plan or forming a certain coalition, that in and of itself wouldn't be considered as an accomplishment for this submission. It should be considered as sort of the predecessor, the lead up to your accomplishments, the foundation on which your accomplishments are built, and you might include some of that in the description or your introduction. But we really will want to know for an accomplishment what has resulted as the result of your coalition coming together or your improvement plan being developed or an assessment being done. And then in approximately the final page of your Phase 1 essay, we'd like you to briefly answer these 2 questions. So describe how your 4 accomplishments taken together represent your community's commitment to sustainable systems changes and policy-oriented long-term solutions. So it gives you a chance to talk a little bit about how these accomplishments connect to our 2nd criterion. And then also an opportunity to talk about how your accomplishments connect to our 3rd criterion, creating conditions to give everyone a fair and just opportunity to reach their best possible health. So we just ask that you write suggested about half a page each on these 2 questions to really connect the dots for reviewers about how the accomplishments that you have chosen demonstrate elements of those specific prize criteria. And then logistically, real quick, you'll need to download a template in the application system. There's a link to download a Word template for the Phase 1 essay, sorry. The first page of the template will have essay instructions that I just shared, and then you begin your essay on the 2nd page. So there's a sort of highlighted area where it says to begin your essay. You can type or copy and paste into that section. Don't worry if the text is highlighted, that means you're doing it right. The highlighting will go away in the submitted version. So yeah, you put your essay into that template, and then when it's all done and complete, you convert it into a PDF format and upload it using the blue upload button there. And if you need any help with that, just reach out to us. After you've completed your essay, the next section asks for this summary worksheet. And so this is just kind of we think of it like an abstract of the information that you've given us about your accomplishments. We ask you to provide each accomplishment name, a brief description, which of the health factor areas the accomplishment addresses, and then approximately what year the accomplishment began in your community. So this is like a brief summary snapshot for reviewers to look at that reflects what you wrote in the longer essay. And one final thing on the online application portal is that as you complete each section of the application, you can hit save section finished at the bottom of each page, and that'll make the status turn to this green check mark that you see on the left of the screen. So once all of your sections are saved as finished, the submit button in the top right corner will become active. And that is what you will hit when everything is done, ready, you've checked everything and you're ready to submit, you hit that button, and that's how we actually receive your application. And you have to hit that button before our deadline, November 4th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So again, if you have any questions about using the online system, or really any questions at all, contact the prize team well in advance of the deadline, and our contact information will be up at the end of the slide deck. But I will turn it to Carrie for just a couple more minutes on sort of what makes a successful application, or what are some tips.
Terrific, thanks Olivia. We will move through this pretty quickly so that we can get to some other Q&A. We are often asked what makes a most successful prize application, and there isn't really a direct answer for us to impart to you or any formula to follow. We can share a few tips based on our experience over the years. One common question is how to best choose just 4 accomplishments from all the great work going on in your community. And we absolutely know it is challenging to narrow it down to 4 accomplishments. We really encourage you to reflect on the full detail of the 6 criteria that we described today and that are found in the call for applications, and really think about which 4 accomplishments, when taken together, best demonstrate how your community is living out the criteria. And as we mentioned already in the first phase, reviewers are particularly honing in on the first 3. So that's really our emphasis when we're deciding which communities to move on to phase 2. So we like to be very clear at this stage of the competition that reviewers are evaluating your essay for specific evidence of those first 3. So defining health in the broadest possible terms, committing to sustainable systems changes, excuse me, I didn't mean to show you that yet, and policy-oriented long-term solutions, and then creating conditions that give everyone a fair and just opportunity to reach their best possible health. So, and I just wanted to add that phase 1 applications are evaluated by a range of reviewers from both the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute and our colleagues at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. All right, this slide is super helpful, I think. We get questions quite often about what are some of the top reasons applicants are chosen or not chosen to move forward in the competition. And again, there's no simple answer. And I know this is a very dense slide, but there are several things we've seen across the years that contribute to strong prize applications and common reasons that applications do not move forward. So we thought a great summary here would be helpful. So stronger applications, they tend to demonstrate this community-wide focus. Hopefully you'll hear this as much of what we've already discussed today, a community-wide focus. They are applications that are responsive, they're demonstrating responsiveness to community needs and disparities in ways that build on strengths of place, community. Strong applications focus on those social and economic factors in creating conditions. They are demonstrating evidence of policy systems and environmental changes. Applications that have detail on specific actions that a community is taking to remove obstacles and increase opportunities for all to be healthy. And we mentioned this too, residents, evidence of where residents, especially residents from historically excluded groups, are engaged in making decisions and implementing solutions. So hopefully you've heard all of these things already in this session. And then on the other side, applications that don't move forward might be that they focused on a single organization or a single initiative, a single program, or a single neighborhood. They featured they featured fewer than 4 accomplishments, such as when Olivia talked about how we do not consider planning and convening processes as an accomplishment on their own. So that could be a mistake. This limited breadth of accomplishments that really do not reflect work across multiple health factors would not be a strong application. Sometimes we see applications that are primarily focused on health behaviors, for example, or clinical care. And certainly those are very important parts of building a culture of health, but we want to hear about that breadth across multiple health factors. Emphasizing programs and service delivery without a discussion of policy and systems changes would not be helpful for judges. As you do discuss programs that when they are tied to efforts that are part of a larger, helping us understand the strategic trajectory of how the program is contributing toward long-term changes, that would be helpful as an alternative. We struggle with applications that don't have enough information about who in the community is experiencing poor health and how disparities are being addressed. That would be a misstep. And then also applications that lack specific examples of how residents, those who are experiencing inequitable health outcomes, are involved in deciding approaches and driving solutions. Those are examples of applications, elements that often do not move forward. All right. I would also add that judges are increasingly aware of the multiple, the varied, the diverse approaches to advancing equity in our communities. And so this animated slide here is certainly not an exhaustive list of all of the ways that communities are addressing elements of equity. Instead, they are meant to summarize some of the stellar examples of from prize-winning communities that we've seen in recent years. So strong applications tend to highlight work from those that are creating equitable conditions, engaging residents most impacted, building and supporting resident leadership, changing policy systems, institutions, structures, fostering inclusion and cultural resilience, and tracking and measuring progress toward equity. And you will find that all of these elements are cross-cutting. They are approaches that relate to elements across the 6 prize criteria. So we really do encourage you and your partners to check out the specific examples of communities that are building a culture of health on rwjf.org/prize. Take a look at the videos and the stories on that site. We are in no way asking you to be a cookie cutter replication of the community's work that you see featured there, the past prize winners' work, but really to get a sense for the range of work being done in communities across the country, and how winning communities are bringing people together and working across sectors to address unique needs. And also, I think it's a good way to get a good sense of the different types of communities and just how these diverse places and how they can become prize winners. So that is a terrific resource for all looking to learn and be inspired. A couple other opportunities featuring prize winners. We are having a webinar on October 9th that will allow folks to hear from past prize winning community leaders, and they'll discuss the value of both of applying for and winning the prize. There's a link here that you should be able to follow through in your slide deck to register. We can also send that around after this webinar and the follow-up materials. And then also, we just recently, the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute just recently released Actions Toward Equity report. And this highlights the work across the first 5 years of prize winners. And this may be a report of interest to you. There's an executive summary and a full report. They include specific examples of strategies communities are using to ensure everyone has a fair and just opportunity for health. All right, so this brings us to the conclusion of the formal presentation today. As a reminder, the webinar recording will be shared, the slides will be shared. They're posted in my.rwjf.org for future viewing. Excuse me, my.rwjf.org. They will be posted for future viewing. We do encourage you to share this webinar with your partners. We mentioned the deadline, Monday, November 4th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I think at this point, we will go to any other questions and answers, questions that have come in, Olivia, and we can stay on for a few minutes afterwards too, if we can't get to all of them. But
sure. Yeah, we've gotten lots of questions come in. I just want to reinforce, please do stay on the line if you're able and we can get to your question, or I'll follow up by email on any questions that we're unable to get to. One question that we've gotten a couple of times is in regard to how are funds distributed for, or who receives the $25,000 cash prize that's part of this designation of the Culture of Health Prize. So what happens is communities that advance to the second phase application will at that time be asked to designate a local entity that can receive the funds should your community win. And that can be it can be a nonprofit organization, it can be a government agency, it could be a school or university, and basically a nonprofit entity. And so there's a couple of sort of tax code restrictions, but other than that, your community chooses where that money goes should you win. And at phase 2, you'll be given sort of more more instruction about that. So that's one of the questions that came in. Also some questions in terms of eligibility. I want to underscore, our call for applications says that community must be defined as, and there's a list of geographical jurisdictions, city, county, town, or a municipality with a publicly elected governing body. So when we say that, it is a municipality, and so it's not at the level of like a park board or a library board or a school district. It does need to be a municipality, a town, city, county, or as we discussed, federally recognized tribes, state designated tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations, or a region. And a region could be geographically connected counties, towns, cities, and reservations and such. So if you do have other specific questions about eligibility for your own community, I really do encourage you to reach out to us here at info@cohprize.wisc.edu or the phone number listed on your screen, because it's usually easiest to just sort of talk through your unique questions on that if you reach out to us. Anything you all would add? I'll look through the other questions to see. That at the webinar that we just talked about with the prize winners will be on October 10th, 2 to 3 p.m. Let's see what else. Oh, the other question that I have seen come up in a couple of different ways is, does your formal city government need to be on board or part of the application or serve as a pass-through for the funds or anything? So I would chime in there that your the application, as we talked about before, the submitting entity or the contacts on your application don't necessarily have to be formal government entities or elected officials or anything. I would say in answer to that, that as a community goes further in the prize application process, because it's a community-wide award, I think reviewers tend to be interested in how city and or county government or any government agencies, elected officials of however your community is is set up, how those folks are engaged in the work, how they're involved, how they support it, whether or not they're formally part of the application. And so I think it's more of a question about, you know, if it's community-wide work, our leaders and partners and residents across the board, you know, working together more so than that those folks need to be formally a part of this stage of the submission process, if that makes sense. Would you add anything to that, Carrie or Katie?
I think that's terrific. It's very helpful.
I know we're at the top of the hour, so.
Yeah, well, I was just reflecting on one question we haven't perhaps said a whole lot about today is the notion of evidence-based programs. And I know some people have asked about that in the past, and I don't think we've talked a lot about evidence and innovation throughout this webinar. So just to say a little bit about that, we really do look for both. This notion of balance again is kind of helpful to think about. So we tend to both look at whether the work is evidence-based, as in informed by data, and how are communities innovating to meet the unique needs of communities. So I would not say we emphasize one over the other. We take a balanced approach to that, and just wanted to make sure we were bringing that into the conversation.
Great.
We can take a couple more. It's 3 minutes after. I know we had to start a little bit while people are joining us a little bit later than anything else, or we can.
Yeah, I was just wondering if this kind of got answered in the scheme of the slides, but just to reinforce, we have a question about re-emphasizing planning and convening processes such as coalition development, community health assessments, or improvement plans do not qualify as accomplishments for this submission. And just to underscore that, what we mean by that is if your accomplishment just says, you know, we formed a coalition or we completed a community health assessment and we don't really know what happened as a result of that, that wouldn't be considered as an eligible accomplishment. So I hope that answers that question. And if not, please contact us. Let's see, others? If there, how many, we kind of covered that. How many applications will be funded? So we usually, in the end, up to 10 winners can be named, but it's ranged between 4 and 8 in the past. I think maybe we can put up the poll.
So in closing today, we wanted to hear from you all on where you're at in your decision making. We thank you all for your time invested in listening to this session. For those of you that joined us live, we'd like to put a couple questions up here. Inform your decision about whether or not to apply for the RWJF Culture of Health Prize. We might have a technical issue.
No, I think we're doing fine. We've got about 35% voted. Yep.
Terrific, thank you.
Mm-hmm. We're up to about 40%.
And then we'll also be following up after the webinar with a brief evaluation. So we'd love to hear more about your feedback too.
Okay, we're above 50%, Carrie.
All right.
So I think we'll stay on the line, continue answering some of the questions that have come in.
If folks have to drop off, we did want to end, we will stay on the line, as Olivia said, but just with this nice quote from a past prize winner that we made a big commitment to the prize competition because we were committed to this work. We want to be part of a network. We wanted to learn and contribute. We're not in it for the glory, not for the money, but for the long haul. So we really thought that captures a lot about the RWJF Culture of Health Prize competition and many of the reasons why we hear people want to submit an application. So.
And just a little extra plug here. So one of the questions we got is how did previous winners use the prize money? And I think that that'd be a great question to bring to our October 10th webinar that's happening that's featuring some prize winners. So again, that's on October 10th. And we can reshare that link as well.
I just wanted to add to that. This is Carrie. As Katie had mentioned earlier, this is very much a grant and not an award. So we take that very seriously in that we don't track. There are no strings attached in terms of that $25,000 award. So we don't have any data to share about the results across the nearly 40 winners to date. But as Olivia said, that webinar would be a great time to find out more about how they have leveraged winning the award for their own community and beyond.
Yeah, and I think there are a couple other questions sort of clarifying, could that money be split between organizations? And I think that's really something that, we can address for communities that go further in the process, but that your community has control over how you split up that money really. So it's kind of up to you. All right. So let's see, a couple of other potential clarifications here. Question about our previous RWJF grant recipients eligible to apply. So to clarify this as well, as I think we've gotten a couple questions, if your community is already listed as a prize winner in the call for applications, prize winners cannot apply again because it's considered an ongoing designation that you already have. And then if your community was a finalist in the 2019 competition, that means that you received a site visit to your community this past spring in 2019. You would just need to wait a year before you reapply. Otherwise, anyone's eligible to apply and to win, and it's separate from other RWJF selection processes. So, it's not, it wouldn't matter if you have been funded by RWJF in other ways or have not. Either way, it doesn't matter. All right. Yeah, let me know if you feel free to jump in, Carrie, if you would add anything to that.
Yeah, thanks.
There have been some questions about, I think I mentioned that already. You can apply as a region if you have two sort of two geographically connected cities or towns or areas that are working together as a region regularly. I think a lot of these we've answered. There's a technical question about the essay template, if there's a specific margin sizes, single space, double space, font sizes. So the instructions for community applicants document that I pointed to in the beginning in the resources of my.rwjf.org has that information, and the template itself that you download to put your essay in has all of the specified settings. And so it is 5 pages single spaced with a Calibri 11 font, and it's all spaced in there. So if you stick with the template, you will be good on that end.
Do you want to say anything more about the template? I feel like every year, Olivia, that template throws some applicants off in terms of just working with that technology. But is there anything more you'd like to, any other pointers that you have from experience?
Sure. Yeah, as mentioned, it's a Word document, and it's created so that you can enter your essay within the formatting specifics of that template in the area where it tells you to start your essay. You will not be able to upload a document that's longer than 6 pages. So 1 page is the instructions and 5 pages is your essay. So if it's longer than that, it won't upload. So if you have some upload troubles, that could be why. You do have to upload it as a PDF document. So when you're finished composing your essay, you have to convert it. And we're always happy to help troubleshoot that if technology is an issue there, but it does need to be uploaded as a PDF. Other questions that you have heard?
No, just to say, I feel like that's for late folks that are really scrambling on deadline day. I feel like that's a kind of a pain point. So
yes,
can't encourage folks enough to make sure you've got that figured out. It sounds like it should be pretty straightforward, but technology doesn't always cooperate either.
Yes, and sometimes things show up differently on different people's computers, or if you're having trouble with Maze, sometimes a different web browser could be helpful. So again, start the process early, look at all the information and the templates and everything, the online system early, and just reach out to us if you have questions, because that's the biggest thing. Yeah, people are trying to upload at the last minute. There might be a lot of people on the site. That could be a big problem. So yeah, just start early. And then if you have those technical difficulties, email us right away, call us right away, let us know, you know, we're in there. I have my document. I'm having trouble. The sooner you can do that, the better. So
Olivia,
Angela
I'll take the poll down. Is that all right?
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thanks all for voting. Angela has chatted out the link to the October 10th webinar again for registration. So please take a look to that. Also in the chat, there's a link to the slides, and again, we'll send all of that out to you all afterward.
Well, I think we should wrap up for today. As we have said, we are very much available. The team at University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute is available to you should you have other questions. There are just a few weeks left, so please get started on those applications if you haven't already. And that November 4th deadline is rapidly approaching. But yeah, on your screen is our email, phone number. You know, can reach us, and we will get back to you with any answers to questions you have. And just again, to underscore, if you have a unique jurisdictional question, please contact us right away, because those can be very unique based on places. So we like to talk with folks well in advance on that. All right, we will end the formal session today and the recording. And again, we thank you for investing this time and learning more about this process and taking to heart the 6 prize criteria and RWJF's vision to build a culture of health. And we will follow up with folks with the recording and some other links. And we appreciate all the good work you're doing in your local communities and to build a culture of health. So thank you so much. Thank you, Olivia and Katie, for co-presenting today, and take good care.
Thanks, everyone.